Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore positive. It was not a positive outcome on Wednesday afternoon football. From the Confluence on Wednesday afternoon. You know, Chris Pika has been my Kemosabe since 1984, has been instrumental in helping us get Baltimore positive truly off the ground and launched. The man behind the scenes. You know, Chris, I have you on, and thankfully when you come on, you don't sing the Mount St. Joe fight song. That's Moeller on the other. Why is it that the Dundalk guy gets subjected to a life of nothing but Rafael Alvarez and Jim Schwartz and Jalen? Every day it's a Mount St. Joe thing.
Freeman.
Keep going. Go ahead. Just keep going. Who's the most famous Mount St. Joe graduate of all time? Who would that be? Not Mark Teixeira. Who would it be?
Oh, boy. Frank Cashin would be up there.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
Long time people, would remember that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think he would be up there. I mean, we've had, we've had a lot of good athletes come through. Alvarez, Frank Luber was another St. Joe grad who was in the media in Baltimore for a long time. So I mean, we've had a few people.
Well, I would say this. I wanted to have you on as former Saints, Falcons, what the hell's going on inside the building. You know, you work for the Saints during Katrina. You work for the Falcons during Michael Vick. And then there's crisis management. And, look, you and I talk about this as friends and having a beer or crab cake over the course of years. You sat in at Super Bowls with us. You now live here in Baltimore after relocating from Atlanta after so many years, and you're part of this thing and understanding COVID, and you've been tested working for ESPN and various organizations to do what you do for a living. In the aftermath of this, and I don't know if Harbaugh's going to speak to this or DeCosta or Cass or Bisciotti himself, for me, 20 of the players went off the side of the bus, off the road in a bus and couldn't play, and they moved the game time 4 times. At some point, the organization probably did something pretty egregious here, right? Like, and Goodell pretty much is doing the, hey, man, we made the rules, go play. It's been a very awkward week or week and a half, I think, for the Ravens, for football, for the disease itself and the virus, and for how the league deals with it, running around with that quarterbacks on Sunday. I wanted to have you on Monday. I wanted to have you on Tuesday. But then I was like, you know what? I want you to measure this now that it's all over with. The Ravens did not get embarrassed 48-6. They hung in the game. The Steelers kind of stunk. The game was more competitive than probably it should have been. Which, allows Roger and everybody to say, hey, we got the integrity of the game. Boy, so many things. Player safety, the NFLPA, the notion that there might have been a Wildcat strike, all that went into this. This was a stressor of massive proportions for the Ravens, and it really starts with somebody coming into their building dirty and getting other players dirty, right?
Well, not only that somebody came in dirty, it was one of their own. I mean, if the reports that we've seen are to be believed, their head strength conditioning coach wasn't following the rules, wasn't wearing the tracker that they, asked every player and every staffer that's in the building to wear.
They didn't ask him; they demanded it, didn't they? If you're going to work here, you have to have this, right?
Right. It's NFL rules. This is what you have to do on a daily basis.
Otherwise, Lamar gets sick.
Right.
Right. Literally, we can't get Lamar sick.
You can't get anybody sick, and you see what happens. And this was a combination of someone not following the rules, and then you see what the virus does is it transmits from person to person. I won't say player to player. We'll just say person to person. And as Robert Griffin III talked about in post-game, families were impacted by this apparently, and some of the player families. So this is something that kind of, just blossomed out. And then you add to it the fact that the league was basically out of real estate because the week after Thanksgiving is the last bye week. Now the NFL is up against where they've got no room to move games. They can move days, but they have no way to postpone short of doing a week 18. And
well, why are they so adamantly against that? Like that would be one of my real questions if I had Jim Steig on the bat phone or Greg Ayalo or Pete Abitani or McCarr, any of these guys. Like, what's the real rub on them not doing this better? Like that's the thing that just blows my mind. Other than arrogance and ignorance, which they're good at that. They're good at ignoring Colin Kaepernick. They're good at being arrogant about issue of all kinds, right? But on this one, it would seem to me they could have been incredibly creative to do this really well, to get all their players to post. instead of what they've done this week, which is we don't care which warm bodies we have in the helmets at this point. The only thing that matters is the logo on, at least on the Steelers, one side of their helmet, for the Ravens both sides. It's been a little bit of a disgusting turn by my standards, and I'm a bootlicker for them. I've done 28 Super Bowls. I love the league. I live for the league. It's changed my life. Like, the sport of culture lamp here, for you as well. It fed your family for a long, still does. So I'm not biting the hand that feeds here, but I think they have a level of responsibility that they've really abdicated to the fans of Denver and anybody else to put that product on the field, to march the Ravens up with backups that had never practiced together. They're going off the plank for me. A little bit like the Republican Party. Just off the plank of like, come on, do you stand for anything, or is this newly what you stand for?
They passed these rules. This was the setup back in September when the season started. This isn't new. The league had this in writing. It went to the clubs in writing. They knew what the consequences of an outbreak could be. And they said they were going to let the medical determination decide how they were going to handle it. In Denver's case, they had one position group. It happened to be the most important one, quarterback. But the Broncos, to be fair, didn't have a quarantine quarterback. They didn't have somebody sitting out who wasn't coming to the facility every day that they could have brought in off the practice squad to have them play quarterback. They chose not to do that. They get an outbreak in that particular position group, and the league goes, listen, in September, we all agreed to this.
Well, there you go. Arrogance and ignorance. Arrogance, I'm not going to wear the mask. Ignorance, I'm going to ignore the rule. And then come consequences.
Right.
And in the case of the consequences for the Broncos who stunk was this embarrassment for everybody that it ever was sanctioned. So for me, I don't care what we agreed to. Now that we're here, we need to make some new rules because we can't sanction this. We're the National Football League. And then there's the Ravens part of this where it's 20 players deep and everybody's no speaky. Yet they have to go out and play the way they played on Wednesday, and for Harbaugh to say we're not one batting 1,000. Well, talk about that a little bit, John, because like the league lost a Thanksgiving night game. All that the league had to do. Chris Collinsworth, boo woo woo! I had to stay in Pittsburgh 6 days. I had to stay in Pittsburgh 6 days too a couple years ago. Tough luck, Collinsworth. But for me, they can't have this happen again to the Giants next week and then to the Chiefs the week after that and on and on and on. And I guess it's a cautionary tale about how clean you have to be, especially when the virus is raging right now everywhere in our society. But I thought the league would have handled this differently from an integrity standpoint, that they would just say, we're not going to sanction a game like that. That's just, it's not good for our brand. But I think they've jumped that shark now where they don't really care. They clearly don't care.
Right. They did what baseball did with the Cardinals was they looked, remember St. Louis had a bad outbreak and they lost a bunch of games. Lost by meaning they postponed a bunch of games. They had to play a ton of doubleheaders down the stretch.
An accelerated schedule.
Accelerated schedule to get to 60 games. But Major League Baseball made it quite clear they were going to get to their playoffs at the time that they prescribed. And if St. Louis didn't get to 60 games and didn't qualify for the playoffs, it was their fault because they put themselves in that position to begin with. And that's basically what the NFL has done here. Without a bubble, they basically said, listen, we've given you roster flexibility. We've given you 15 practice squad slots. You had the opportunity to put some people in quarantine. If you follow the rules, you're going to have minimal issues. And the thing that's egregious to me is the fact that it's a Ravens staffer that caused this. And he's a strength and conditioning coach. These are the guys they're
tell everybody what that is, because like some people have said the trainer, the strength and conditioning coach. I know what the strength and conditioning coach is. I've had Curtis Schultz on the program a million times and Jeff Friday and all these people that I've known who've done it for a living. But Curtis coached me, matter of fact. But for being in the building, other than maybe the chaplain, and not everybody's religious, right? Other than the head coach and maybe the HR department that takes care of your whatever your game tickets and various items like that. the strength and conditioning coach is like the next thing down from the priest in most places, right? Like, it's the state of your body, and
right.
no one in the organization, Justin Tucker, no one doesn't lift weights.
Three people interact with the players more so than the coaches do on a daily basis. That's your strength and conditioning coach, because they work out and lift and they stretch these guys out on the field. Your athletic trainers certainly have close contact with
touches
players.
Every player, not just talks to them, touches them.
Right.
Right.
And the other person who's in the room more than anybody else, and they know everything that goes on in the locker room, is the equipment guy, the equipment staff, because they're the guys handing the bags with the jocks and socks through the window to the players. They're the ones making sure that the shoulder pads and the helmets are ready to go.
How about cleats in the grass? I mean, the Ravens lost a first down on Wednesday because, Des Bryant didn't have the right cleats.
When I did advances for the Saints, I would have to check the grass at the stadium. I would tell the equipment managers how tall the grass was, so that they had an idea if they were trying to slow us down, because you have to have different size cleats.
And by the way, Jim Haslett probably appreciated that, right?
Right. I mean, but that's part of what you do. But the equipment managers and their staff deal with the players in very close contact on a daily basis. So that's really the three groups. Coaches can kind of stay back a little bit, and it's easier to do, but they're the ones caring for the physical well-being for the players on a daily basis. I mean, really, they're the closest contact to the players, and that's what makes this situation as bad as it was, because it's one of those extremely close contacts, and it's probably going to cost Steve Bisciotti a pretty good sized check, and it may cost him a draft pick. So
well, Chris, you talk about Bisciotti and getting fined and whatever. They've broken the code of the league, right? Like, by not being able to post up and play, like that, and it wasn't something that happened. This is why they spent millions of dollars. This is why they had wristbands. The story on the Broncos coming in on Tuesday was that they're captured on the video cameras, right? The first thing league security says is, where are the cameras in the building? What really happened? Not what did you say happened? What really happened here?
And there are more cameras in the building than ever now because of this. The league can request and look at anything they want that went on in their building, so that they can do the contact tracing. And so that, there's not a lot of secrets now in the building in COVID. And so if this person, this coach, came in and was not wearing his mask, and obviously the tracker is not doing its job, so they can see that electronically, that's going to cost the Ravens, like I said, it's going to cost Steve Bisciotti a nice check he's going to have to put out. And like I said, it may also cost him a draft pick, because that put a league partner in a very bad position, NBC, because that costs them money to keep their people, their crews, their trucks in Pittsburgh for multiple days beyond.
Oh, it's an ish show for the league, right? For the sponsors, for the network, for the talent, for opening the building, for who's got the keys to Heinz Field, to who's parking all at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, right?
NBC, I'm sorry, the NFL could have pressured NBC to put that game in prime time, but they backed off because NBC had a live event that they had paid a lot of money for. It's a big deal event for them, the lighting of the Rockefeller Center tree. And so the NFL, because of the situation they put NBC in, didn't feel right to squeeze them to say, no, we know our game will get better ratings in your event, but we're not going to do that to you. Play the game at 3:30 and you're clear for your primetime schedule that night. So that's really where, the league had to back off a little bit, because usually they'd strong-arm the TV partner.
Well, it's a marquee game on the whole calendar that I think they wanted to hide when they realized the Ravens were going to show up with the JV, right?
Well, that's part of it. But like I said, the biggest part of it was in the contract. The NFL could have forced that. They chose not to and be a good partner back to NBC, considering the additional costs that NBC had to take in hotels, the truck, crew, paying the crews, overtime, everything else like that. It's a mess all the way around. And like I said, it may likely cost that coach's job with the Ravens. I mean, we'll wait and see what happens.
Chris Pike is here. He is blog and tackle. And like every good Baltimorean, he eats his to heart. I shipped him over some Mint Flicks. I talk about Mint Flicks and chills. Is this your favorite or your wife's? It's your wife's favorite,
my wife's favorite. My wife's favorite.
Yeah, well, I've been saying it's your favorite or favorite of the Pika household. Right. We're shipping the boxes, 8 pints of the most delicious ice cream on earth. It comes to you in the box, but not the pink truck. I have learned this is a scoop truck. This is not a delivery truck. They teach me these things. That's why I have the Taharka family on. $15.70 off the box. $56? No. $40.30, $5 a pint. And you get not just these delicious flavors here, like honey graham, wake and bake, caramel crunch, peanut butter cup, chocolate love, key lime pie, roasted strawberry, coffee Oreo, beautiful struggle, which I've never had, mint flakes and chills, and pistachio. You also get the holiday flavors, including peppermint bark, the eggnog. What's that, sweet potato?
I said all great flavors.
Every single one. Have you had the sweet potato crumble yet?
I have not.
You're not going to get it from me because I don't share that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being honest with you. I'm not. Sure. I only have 2 pints of it. It's like, if you want the black is beautiful from me, I may give you a bite. You know, it's got the oats in it and the chocolate, but I'm not going to give you the whole pint. They don't make it anymore. By the way, I sent you the pumpkin cheesecake. Can't get it anymore. So you probably can hawk it out online right now. Eat it, though, but eat it slowly because once it's gone, it's gone. And I learned this week. My favorite seasonal up till now was the pumpkin spice latte. I mean, unbelievable pumpkin spice latte. And I have 1 pint left. I kind of hid it from my wife behind the roasted strawberries, so she won't find it. Chris, you know, your background with Michael Jordan and Birmingham, and I always kiss your ass, quite frankly, about all that and our friendship and the News American and all that. But, you know, there are guys in my life that are true PR guys, right? Like, I don't know what you consider me. Probably consider me really like a shock jock or a radio guy or a writer or a web developer, whatever anybody thinks I am. I really think of PR as like your primary, like, you know, your skill set, that you're most qualified to be a PR. Like Don Moeller had that background, right? Put your PR hat on for me here because, you know, Harbaugh in the post games, Chad Steele will deal with it. Chad Steele's not going to deal with it. Chad Steele's not calling me on the phone and telling me exactly what happened, not getting out in front of it. Chad Steele's not having a press conference. I don't see a press release coming. And you're now telling me that, like, and look, I'm a smart guy, right? This is thick with HIPAA, like, you know, all over it. We have sick players who have COVID. They could die potentially. We're not talking about it right now. We're not talking about it until everybody comes back in that way. But then there's the part where you bring up that nobody thinks about, which is the league's going to come for Bisciotti's ass and Dick Cass because there are cameras. There were responsibilities. They were not met. Nobody's talking about how pissed New York is about all of this, but they're pretty pissed, even though that, you know, nobody's talking. Give me a little background as to the Kevin Byrne, the league, the 30 years of experience you have on this, because this is wildly unique, right? Like, it's sort of no one's fault, but it's everybody's fault, but we had to mitigate against it. The commissioner had to come out and say, whoa. You follow the rules and follow the protocols. We played that game last Thursday and Dallas is in town, right? So it's a Willy Wonka thing, right? Like, you broke the rules. You touched the glass elevator. No gobstopper for you. So there's all of that swirling around. And then there's a guy like me that's like, hey, dude, not only am I like a radio station dude and whatever, I'm a fan. You asked me to move my schedule 4 times this week because you didn't have your ish together, you know, up in your bubble. And you didn't play your games, and then you played it, and it was a half-ass game. What's the responsibility of the Ravens here internally to come out and just kind of tell everybody at least some sort of kind of story about what happened instead of having Mike Preston write about it?
Well, there's a couple of ways, and I think the way they'll probably do it is they obviously said that they disciplined a staffer. They didn't name that person. They just said they disciplined a staffer for their role in this. What they're going to do is they're going to probably punt it back to the league office until the league office makes the determination and announces whatever fine or whatever, draft pick or whatever else they're going to do to the Ravens. They'll let the league office handle that portion of it. Now, they may leak some of this to national media. They may leak it to the Peter Kings of the world or others that they're friendly with, and may say, hey, here's kind of the backstory, or a player agent who may have a story from a player may do the same thing. I mean, it's just going to depend. But right now, this, unlike the Denver situation that pointed at a player, this points at a staffer. So my guess is the Ravens will just close ranks and not speak of what happened, and they'll let the league determine the punishments and announce the punishments in due time. And the Ravens will do the Belichick. They'll just say, well, we're on the next week. We're on the Dallas. we're past these 10 days. We're past playing Pittsburgh. We're done with all this. We're worried about what's ahead of us and trying to make the playoffs. And so that's how you kind of deal with it in a lot of ways. It's just, you just turn your back on what just happened and you worry about what's ahead of it and let the league handle what the league's going to handle because it involves a staffer. You know, if a player was getting thrown under the bus because they were responsible for it, then that's a different story because a player agent may leak that, hey,
I don't know that a player could be
happened.
responsible for it, like to get everybody sick like that, right? Like that was exactly what they were trying to mitigate to say, all right, Calais Campbell, you got it because your kid brought it home from middle school, whatever, you know?
Right,
like,
right.
Okay, you're sick, get out, stay out. Who did you touch? You touched one other player, two other players. Okay, who were you near? Our wristband tells you, not 20 of the players. I mean, it literally was a nightmare scenario for the franchise, like a crisis management for the league and the franchise going into Thanksgiving that, I mean, they're not good at this, right? They've never had to do this. There's a whole new science involved in all of this.
Well, you also understand, too, that the league is not concerned about transmission between teams because even though there are close contacts on the field, it's not for a long period of time. It's for a few seconds every play. The real concern is in the locker room, and the real concern is on the sidelines. The league extended the sideline area from about what would be like the 32-yard line to the 25. They're trying to extend out and limit how many people are in the bench area because that's really where the contacts take place. You can distance in a locker room. You can have all the barriers you want. But once the game starts and you're in your own space on that bench area, watch how the offenses and defenses, how close they are together on the benches, how close the coaches are to the players. It's very hard to separate and distance during the course of a football game.
Well, they get met with a mask at the sidelines.
Right, but you're still around each other, and you're around each other in very close quarters. I mean, you know, the center hands the ball to the quarterback. If the center has it on his hands and it gets on the ball and it gets to the quarterback, and they're doing that 60 times a game, well, there's a
or 150 times in practice on Thursday.
Right, there are high touch areas that happen. Okay, it's helmets, it's pads, it's jerseys, and that also tells you how insidious this virus is. It's like a cold virus or anything else, not to that extent, but what I'm saying is the transmission of it. And you realize what happens, and you can't wash your hands after every play. You know, you can put a mask on the sidelines. You can try to distance 6 feet from your teammates, but that's almost impossible to do on a football field, sideline, and locker room on game day. And that's where a lot of this transmission, you know, it apparently happened too. These guys are just in close quarters. You're in close quarters on a plane. You're in close quarters on buses. You can have extra buses to try to separate people out, but you're still touching railings. You're still touching, you know, door handles and everything else. You can't sanitize everything all the time. And so you're going to have transmission that somebody brings into the building, or, you know, and it spreads like wildfire. And that's what happened to the Ravens here. And, you know, that you could do all the contact tracing you want. The league had some sort of, you know, program that they could tell, hey, well, this should end by X date. If you've gotten everybody quarantined, separated out, this should burn out by this point. And they were right. There was on game day, there was no issues with the test between the Steelers and the Ravens. Now, what'll be interesting is in the next few days, whether any more Ravens or any more Stafford test positive coming out of that game.
Chris Pika joining us here. He is Blog and Tackle out on the Twitter thing, and also working with the Pro Football Writers Association, Bahamas Bowl, amongst many others, and habitating now just south of where Al Kaline was educated down at Southern High School, for you young old-timers who don't call it the Digital Harbor. Chris, moving on to the next part of that is players going out and playing after not having a weight room, not having a gym, not being able to work out, doing everything remotely, and then having 11 days off of the field before going through an awkward walkthrough by every measure, and then going and playing a football game with half the team never having been on a field before with an NFL jersey.
That's where, you know, that's hard. The fact that the Ravens were able to stay as close as they did to Pittsburgh was a credit to the defense, who played a great game. Offensively, it was a struggle, but you're right.
No, Denver was a struggle.
Right. When you're running guys out there that haven't seen first team snaps, and you're asking them to play a major amount of snaps, a major amount of time. The
No,
fact
no,
that
no.
the
You're
Ravens were
asking him to
able,
block T.J. Watt.
right? Well, that's what I mean. You're asking them to do something there without any real preparation time. Now, it tells you how great of an athlete that they are because they're able to do that and able to actually function at a high level for the most part. But it's a difficult position to put the coaches in. It's a difficult position for the players to be in. It's not what you want if you're a member of the Ravens organization. It's not the way you want to go into a key divisional rivalry game, but that's where we are in 2020.
Chris Pike is here. We are getting through this week here in Dallas coming in. You know, I'm disgusted by the way they played it this week. I didn't like it. I'll never like it. It'll always be sort of a little bit of a besmirch on them in the same way that scab football would be or whatever. But I've referenced Eddie Feigner, and not to be disrespectful to the king or his court, but where it goes from being a legitimate thing to whatever that Denver thing was and whatever that Ravens thing, it was not a legitimate – it should not have legitimately been sanctioned as such. That being said, the future over the next 4 or 5 weeks and what's going on with COVID in America, the fact that there's no plan at all for them to shut it down, that there's no bubble, there's no plan B, Goodell's been pretty arrogant about it. That's troubling to me. And I don't know what their gig is about the Week 18 thing. They have eschewed the bubble concept completely. That has absolutely worked for 100% of the other pro organizations on this continent to get them to a finish line, that they're going to be smarter than everyone else.
Well, and I'll say this in relation to that. Yes, you're hearing Goodell saying all that, but ultimately he's speaking on behalf of the owners, including Steve Bisciotti. This is what the owners want to do. They don't want to have the bubble. They don't want to have the cost that the NBA and the NHL had, and even Major League Baseball in the playoffs to do a bubble. They don't want to do that.
Well, what's the cost of playing a playoff game without Pat Mahomes? What's the cost of having to move your playoff game from Saturday to the following Wednesday? Like, what's the cost of all of that? Chris, and I can go into the rabbit hole with this, and I know you saw me tweet about it, but you're a World Cup guy. I'm a World Cup guy. Dude, they could have easily shut the season down now and said, you know what, we got 5 weeks left. We want to do this the right way. Let's get everybody home. Let's get everybody healthy. Let's take care of these families during the holidays. We'll bring this thing back in January. We're gonna have it figured out. Give us 2 weeks. We'll have a Phoenix pod, a Vegas pod, a LA pod. All the weather will be good. We'll bring everybody out. We got to deal with Marriott. We've got this resort over here and this here and that there. We have this field over at Arizona State because they ain't using it. We got this. They could have been doing that. Chris, you and I could have taken that job in April over the last 6 months. You and I would have a plan because we're smart guys. And there would at least be a plan. They could have at least put a team on a plan to say, what is the nuclear strategy for finishing the season if, I don't know, let's just make up a number. 3,126 people die on a Wednesday when we're staging a football game. That happened on Wednesday, Chris, in America. You know what I mean? Like, we're now on that kind of the pace. There's nothing at a governmental level, there's nothing at the NFL level, and there's not even a plan B for them to sort of suspend everything and say, you know what? Here's the other plan. Oh, by the way, we'll be the World Cup. We'll play 7 days a week in February and March. Literally. We'll set up a schedule. We'll have our own little thing, and we'll finish the season the right way. And you know what? Some of the players will be able to come back and play, and the league will be better. We'll have a better way to do this, and we'll make even more money. Like, the fact that they didn't even consider that, the fact that escape hatch doesn't exist, I'm shocked. I really am. Given the stakes of moving Thanksgiving games and shaming the Ravens and playing a game with no quarterbacks, I mean, this is where we're beginning. Where's it going to go? This is what we did this week.
Well, I think there's a couple things at play. One is, and I think Marty Conway could probably speak to this a lot better than I even could, but I know the league has television contracts and they have contracts for Super Bowl and the facility and all the things that they have in Tampa on a certain date. Yes, they have a backup date, at least if there's some to be believed. I think there's a backup date of like February 27, 28, somewhere in there, that if they had to, absolutely had to, they could. But the league has long-term contracts that go back several years. And so they're really bound and determined that their championship game is going to play on this date. and that's what they want. That they're paid by the networks for the playoffs more so than the regular season. There's a lot of things that are involved with that. There's a lot of long-term planning involved with that, and basically the
But
league has
nobody's
said,
coming.
right, but they still have contracts and they still have advertising contracts. The advertisers are buying spots on the television broadcast that they have, their advertising budget and their plans are set up to go off on that date. So there are a lot of things that come off of that business-wise that I think the league is incredibly loath from moving that. That is an absolute last case scenario.
Well, that's why Week 18 would move everything a week, and then we go down a slippery slope.
And then push, and then now you get into competitive things because now the buys are gone. You can't do certain things you don't want to do, and that literally is now they're at a point here in the last 4 weeks. There's no buys left. They have they've got no elasticity in the schedule like they did 5 weeks ago to move games around. They're done now. They've got to get this squared away quickly, and they've got to hope that San Francisco now playing in Arizona where the rates are twice the rates that they had in Santa Clara, that they don't run into a problem there.
Yeah, California's not going to sanction events at this point. That's pretty obvious.
Right. I mean, they've got a lot of other issues too that they've got to deal with. So that's where they are.
Chris, I appreciate you, man, as always. I'm sorry we didn't get you on before the game, but I think it's just as great a conversation in the aftermath of getting through the weekend in this Dallas game. Appreciate you, man. I'll see you at Baltimore Positive, all right?
Thank you very much, Nestor, as always.
Chris Pika, blog and tackle, my pal, Mount St. Joe. I'm not going to let him sing the fight song as well as Loyola. Never a Don, always a Greyhound. Ness at BaltimorePositive.com reaches me. Please order some ice cream. You will thank me. It's delicious even when I hold the box up upside down. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore Positive.